Welcome to Bungalows for Bachelors, number 12. We are going to be discussing temporary utility access today, getting stuff ready for construction on your site, because believe it or not, that's going to be the next step is construction. So let's go ahead and get the screen share going here and get into it. Alrighty. So we are in phase 2, site development. This is the last sort of piece of phase 2 as I've written it out. Getting temporary utility access on the site, basically water, sewer, and power, so that you can have a convenient time building things. So why would somebody want to gain utility access this early along in the process? Well, as you can see, you really wouldn't want to be not having these things, because the results are that you need to develop other methods of solving these problems. If you don't have water supplied to your lot, you got to go haul it in, or you got to do something else, and that's basically a pain. It's sort of out of the question if you're going to be doing concrete work, because you need a good water supply to clean concrete off all your tools. So water is kind of a necessary thing for that. Um, the generator is describing that if you don't have consistent power, you're going to have to put gas into a generator, keep refueling it, turn it on, turn it off. They're loud. It can be annoying to the neighbors. It's just kind of it can be done, but it's certainly not as bad as not having water, but it is still somewhat inconvenient. So, and then of course the center picture where if you don't have a place to relieve yourself, then you'll have to find ways to relieve yourself. And that's not really convenient. So getting water access. So this is going to be, there's not really temporary water access. You pretty much have water or you don't. The difference in temporary versus permanent is that, you maybe attach a hose fitting right after your water meter and then just use that hose to do all the water stuff on your property. And then permanent is going to be when you've got piping and stuff going to your house, and then you've got hose bibs on the side of your house for hoses. So that's, once you get the water meter hooked up, you're basically done with the water people and the water providers. You don't need to have them come back out for anything. They're basically done. So that is different from electrical, and I'll talk about that in a second. But basically, you're going to get water on your site by either getting it as part of a public service, that is part of a larger water sanitation group company. It can be on a small level like HOA, like local water supplying, or it can be, city provided, things like that. But basically, you're going to pay an impact fee. The impact fee is designed to cover the cost of the infrastructure of everything technically upstream, not necessarily downstream because it's not sewer, um, upstream of your water. What did all of the, how much does it cost to get all this infrastructure built? The purifying, the sourcing, the pumping, the water towers, you name it. Stuff's there, and it costs money for that stuff to exist. So therefore, to enter into the system, you pay an impact fee because you're going to impact that system and put a demand on it. So you're going to pay a chunk for that, first of all, and then you're going to also pay a connection fee, which basically covers the labor and parts, the meter, for someone to come out and tap into the main. Now, depending on how the development was done before you bought the lot, there may already be a water meter. There may, in which case they're just going to come out and basically unlock it and put it in your name, give you an account. I would say that is most likely more common. A developer of subdivisions is most likely going to have that taken care of. But in the case that you don't have that water meter, you're going to have to pay to have the main tapped. And basically what they do is they bury up the main, they unbury the main, and they basically saddle onto it, and they drill a hole in it, and they connect into it and seal to that. They don't like modify the pipe in some way. They just basically latch onto it like a leech and pull water that way. So that is how that is done. That's how you connect to main. Sometimes you got to pay for that, and that would cost more. And if the main doesn't go far enough to your property, in an even worse case scenario, then you have to pay for that main to be extended, and that's going to be something that's very much usually out of your control, because that work needs to be done certainly by licensed and registered people who have worked with the supplier of those water. They know the rules. They know how to install mains and stuff like that. It's a very different kind of work. So you can also drill a well if you don't have access to this water. Now, there is a benefit of drilling the well in that you're not going to end up paying for any of the water after you get the well. There are some drawbacks, though, in that sometimes you can drill a well and something goes wrong in the process, or something was not just like it hit a bad spot in an aquifer, or some kind of thing like that, and you end up with bad water. And you could try to filter it, and it always needs to be filtered, but the filtration process sometimes is not enough, and there's a leak in the pipe somewhere, or something just not working right. And usually that's not the fault of the people who are drilling the well, and it's written in the paperwork that if that happens, they still get paid because they did their job. They drilled the hole. So you may end up paying again. I was familiar with the home build where that happened. They had to drill 2 wells in order to get good water. So that kind of sucks, but it happens. So you don't have to pay for the water, but you do have to pay for all of this in the drilling and piping and all the stuff to get down to the well, and of course all the systems above the ground to give you a consistent supply of water. You can't just put a pump on it and run a hose, because then it's going to like have a pumping variety. The pressure is not going to be consistent, so you have to install the tanks so that it smooths out the pressure, and that all costs money, and you got to cover that and store it. So it's a little more complicated when you got a well, but that's how you're going to get some water. Sewer access is pretty straightforward. You are not going to have a like temporary outhouse that is somehow connected to your septic or your sewer. You're not going to like temporarily connect to this. It's just that you're just not going to. You just get a porta potty out there. That's the whole construction thing. Usually, if you have a septic, that's one of the last things that's going to happen with your project, because all of the plumbing in the house should be done so that you can connect to that and then finish that out in your yard. Because it's something that's happening out in the yard in the grass. You don't want other trades like walking all over that system and doing all that stuff. That's pretty much one of the last things that's going to happen before a final grading or any landscaping work is done, if they have to bury stuff in your yard. So porta potties are pretty much the way to have that problem solved. And those do cost money. Interestingly enough, most companies that supply these are also the same companies that supply dumpsters. I'm not totally sure why that is. It could have something to do with waste. I don't think they mix construction waste and sewer waste, but it's a possibility that it's the same company. I'm being facetious, but that is an interesting thing. Is usually when you order a waste dumpster, the same company's going to supply porta potties. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then, of course, electrical temporary access. This is the thing that is truly temporary. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to, wherever the nearest transformer is that steps the voltage down to an appropriate voltage for your work, is where they're going to pull lines from. Your job is basically going to be to build the temporary power setup as like the schematic gives. It depends on what the local requirements are, but you basically do what they want you to do in their drawings. You build it, and then supply all the conduits, or this is an underground version, but there are overhead versions as well that are cost less money because you're not digging and trenching and stuff. So you basically set everything up the way they need it, and then you pay the impact fee so that you're paying for all the infrastructure of the electrical system, and then you pay the connection fee so that they can come out, install the wire that takes from the transformer to your box, to your meter box, and you set all that up. And then you're responsible for wiring the meter box, wiring the panel, wiring the outlet that sticks out at the bottom of the breaker panel. Of course, you could pay an electrician to do these things. It kind of depends on what the rules are. If you have to pay an electrician, then okay, then you have to. But it's your job to set this kind of thing up. So that's that. And one of the things to keep in mind is there is a possibility that sometimes because it's intended to be temporary, some jurisdiction will put a time limit on this. They will say basically, we will allow you to have this temporary setup for 6 months or 1 year or whatever it may be. And then after that, you basically are likely to have to just pay an extension fee or something like that if you're not done. So this is not intended to be a permanent solution. Sometimes, in the case of the cabin build, this is not going to be a problem. There are no requirements for time, so it's not a big deal. But it is something to watch for and maybe ask if you are doing it yourself. So if you want to learn a little bit more, there's an example in the Spec House series, episode 11 by Essential Craftsman, that's talking about connecting the water meter. It's nothing crazy. He's basically just getting some temporary water. But you can look around to your local requirements for how to hook up your utilities if you wanted to um, see what that's like and get an understanding of what how you would do it in your area. And you can just basically Google like where would I find a porta potty, stuff like that to really understand how to do things for yourself. But that is going to conclude the BFB number 12 class. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.